let's do the last album then. So this is Haram from Armand Hammer and the Alchemist. It's released on the 26th of March on Backwoodz Studioz. It's 14 tracks and roughly 40 minutes long. So Armand Hammer are a rap duo from New York City. They specialize in dark, paranoid, and awkward music. They are proponents of the so-called art rap movement, which I mentioned briefly when we discussed Bob's Son. So they fit in well with the kind of progressive, disjointed nature of the likes of Rap Ferreira or Open Mike Eagle. Armand Hammer are Billy Woods and Elucid, who are both brilliant rappers and solo artists in their own right. And on Haram, their fifth studio release, the duo are joined by the Alchemist, a rapper and producer, to provide the beats and musical soundscapes on the album. So I've been following Armand Hammer since their 2018 album Paraffin came out, which is pretty much a masterpiece. It's a delirious, uncompromising listen. The compositions are dark and oppressive, but you won't forget them in a hurry. So they followed that up with the excellent Shrines from last year, slightly less oppressive, but no less complex. And a few short months later, we've got Haram, an album with a decapitated pig's head on the cover. Two, yeah. Which I might have found shocking if we hadn't seen that Anal Nathrat cover from Endarkenment. So yeah, nothing really shocks me anymore after that. So the opening tracks are Benny Miles, opens with a sample of like an announcement in an old dance hall or something. Mm-hmm. It's kind of plodding beat and soul singer sample comes in, some of which are clean, some of which are distorted, and all the while we've got Billy Woods laser focused on the delivery of its vocals, declaring you're going to need a bigger boat, you're going to need a bigger ocean, but here's some more rope. It's a delirious, dizzying and imposing opener, which much of these tracks are. How do you feel about Haram?
I haven't gone into that much detail on this album, having only had a chance to really listen to it a couple of times. I haven't kind of, in terms of my kind of note taking, what have you, I haven't kind of listed each song. However, as you said, when you first went on to introduce the album, it reminded me of Rap Ferreira's Bob's Son in terms of its use of voice samples, that kind of floaty and ethereal soundscapes and loops, the odd flourish of kind of tinkling piano and strings and what have you. And from that perspective, I quite enjoyed it. I'm beginning to think that rap might be a bit more of my thing than I previously thought, or certainly the kind of the rap art or art rap scene certainly seems to be more to my liking than some of this what I would think of as rap. When I think of rap, I just tend to think of like 50 Cent and Snoop Dogg and people like that. So if this is the kind of emerging kind of vision or image of rap, then yeah, I think it's something I could get on board with. I quite enjoyed, all of the tracks on this album. I can see what you mean about there being a kind of paranoid element to their tracks or to their lyrical content. I think perhaps if I'd kind of laboured over the lyrical content in a bit more detail, I would have been able to kind of unpick a bit more of the kind of themes and imagery at play throughout the course of the album, because I definitely think that they're dealing with some pretty heavyweight issues on this album. Some of the songs are quite dark in terms of kind of tone. I picked out, for example, track number 11, Chicarones. I don't know if you're pronouncing that properly, but that is Mexican, or it's a Mexican fried pork dish, whereby they sing about killing pigs, which is obviously a reference to the kind of US police force. I don't know what your thinking on that track was, but I don't think it's as straightforward as just Often Cops.
I don't know, and I think
it's really
I think this album is I think this whole album's quite complex, and I've listened to it quite a bit, but I still don't think I can unpack like much of this at all. But Chicharrones, or however you pronounce that, was one of the ones that there are all these references to pigs throughout the song in like food and society and culture. There's references to the big bad wolf.
I suppose, sorry to interrupt, but I suppose it's worthwhile saying that like when I was doing the research for this album, the name of the album, Haram, that's an Islamic word for, oh Christ, what's it for?
Not for the things you're not allowed to have.
Yeah, I was going to describe it in terms of kind of like things that are not kosher, but obviously kosher belongs to the Jewish faith. But yeah, one of them being pork. So hence.
Yeah, but I don't really know what the significance and how all of that ties together really is. Yeah. Which is why I mean I think there's a lot more in this than I've been able to kind of pull out. But that song, I said there's it's all the pig references, a reference to the big bad wolf. There's a deliverance reference in the song. It's like the squeal piggy. Like and there's the little piggy went to market nursery rhyme. There's all these little playful references, I think there's a lot of depth to this.
Definitely.
But there's also a lot of just really cool shit on here. I mean, the second song, Roaches Don't Fly, is just it's got this really trippy sampling, and like there's a sort of almost 80s sci-fi vibe to the instrumentation, but at the same time there's these really slick guitar solos that are thrown in here and there, alongside a sort of almost snide delivery of the vocals. Go, you don't have to be here if you don't wanna. You don't have to be here if you don't wanna. And it's brilliant. My only criticism of that song is it's too short. It's only a minute and a half, which is disappointing. But there's that kind of progressive nature that was on Bob's Son as well, and that the songs can often morph between various things. Yeah, there's so much cool stuff. Like there's lots of like smoke and jazz and soul. But there's also, I'm trying to find which track it is, but it's almost like the music is played in reverse. It's Pepper Tree, which is
well, that is quite a strange one, isn't it? I think there's a guest. Is there a guest artist on that track?
I'm not sure. There might be. There's a few guests on here.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Pepper Tree is one of them. But it is like it's been played in reverse, which is really experimental and really quite confusing. I think my brain finds it a little bit difficult to cope. And then there's like a really weird like singing woman towards the end. It's a really strange combination of things, and quite experimental, which but always like, this is never boring. There's always something going on, whether it's like spurts of like booming bass or like spurts of experimental jazz, or just interesting lyrics. Like on Wishing Bad, there's no clocks. You don't break rocks, watch yourself rot in a box, dirt in your nostril, worms in all your thoughts. And there's lots of like references to decay and death in that song. It's
even the voice samples or the sound clips themselves are quite thought provoking a lot of the time as well, aren't they? I think they touch on racism, for example, and is it God's feet? I don't know if they particularly touch on racism, but they talk about race, and it sounds like a Cockney, like an English guy saying like, God created all these different people with different colours, and it's like, red, yellow, black, brown, whatever, white, and then like there's somebody who sounds as if he's kind of from Jamaican descent being like, yeah, but white isn't a colour. Like, almost like white is the absence of colour.
Yeah.
And then later on, we kind of talk about consciousness, and there's a voice sample that says something along the lines of, "Do you think God will forgive us?" I like all that, man. It's yeah.
Yeah, there's just tons of stuff to try and like eke out of this every time you listen to it. There's a song Robert Moses. I've never heard of Robert Moses, but I looked up who I think this is about. And he's like a New York mogul who had control over like all the building of infrastructure and parks and stuff in like the 1930s or something like that. And I think he reportedly bulldozed like black and Latino homes to make way for his projects. So he was a very powerful man, but and did a lot of good, but also I think destroyed a lot of lives.
Yeah. Well, I think the band's name, Armand Hammer, is in and of itself. They're named after a famous American philanthropist. But I think he had dodgy dealings with the Soviet Union or something along those lines. So the guys are clued up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually saw Armand Hammer. I saw them twice in the space of like 2 days or 3 days. So they I can't remember if this was 2019, but it was 2018, 2019, and they came up to Glasgow.
You saw them. Did you not see them at the old hairdressers? Am I just making that up?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So saw them there, but I bought the tickets for Glasgow as soon as they were announced, and then the next day they announced tickets for Edinburgh as well. So it's like, well, I live in Edinburgh, so I have to buy tickets for that as well. So I went to see them in Glasgow one night at the old. Is it the old hairdressers? Is that what they're called?
Upstairs. It's upstairs.
Yeah,
like
right in the sort of attic bit.
Yeah.
Right upstairs. And then I saw them the next night or the night after that in Sneaky Pete's in Edinburgh. I have to say the old hairdressers was far better in terms of like the sound. It was a quite Sneaky Pete's was quite boomy, and it wasn't. It was still good, but I think the previous night was a bit better in terms of the sound.
What was the crowd like, man? Like,
it was mobbed in Sneaky Pete's. It was fairly busy, and it's fairly busy in the old hairdresser as well. But yeah, not totally packed. But I mean, they're both small venues, so yeah, they were pretty reasonably busy. But so yeah, both quite good gigs. And they had I can't remember his name. One of the guys who does the beats and stuff on some of their other albums. They invited him along, and he played the beats live on some of the tracks as well. I can't remember his name for whatever reason, but yeah. So they're just quite an interesting, quite exciting group. I like how sort of aggressive the vocals are at times as well. I think that's really cool. It's quite angry at times.
With the exception of Stone Fruit, I'd say. Like the last track in the album. But I enjoy that track as well. Like.
I really like Stone Fruit. It's a really good closer, and they're sort of trying to sing on that, but it's like, lackadaisical singing. But it's just a really good vocal melody. Like, there's that really cool kind of electronic whine like sound that makes it sound like it's from another era. It's quite ye oldie sounding. I don't know why, but that's a really really good album closer. So
how did I rate it?
Yeah,
well, like I said, I feel as if I do need to spend a bit more time on it, having only really listened to it 2 times, really. But from what I've written here in my notes, like I said, need to spend a bit more time with it. But on first listen, I'd be tempted to give it a 7 or 8 out of 10. So I think there's potential for me to really kind of fall in love with it, as I did with the Rap Forever album. And it's I never thought I'd be into this type of thing. But as I said, if this is the kind of new and emergent rap scene, then yeah, it's something I can definitely get on board with it.
Awesome. Interestingly, Backwoodz Studioz are quite an exciting label. I think it's Billy Woods' label, and he
Right.
does his own solo stuff, which is very similar to this. But he guests on a lot of other people's tracks and stuff. And I think Backwoodz Studioz are a label to watch. Like whenever they release something, I'm interested in hearing it. So definitely worth keeping an eye on them too. As for this album, I've given it a 9. I really like it. I've listened to it a bit more than you, but I still haven't listened to it enough. Just the more I listen to it, the more I like it. So, and I already really like
Their stuff.
Armand Hammer anyway. So, this is maybe a little bit more accessible than Paraffin, perhaps, but it's still a difficult listen, I would say, but a rewarding one.
Sure.
All right, so that was Haram by Armand Hammer and The Alchemist.
You're gonna need a bigger boat, you're gonna need a smaller ocean, but here's some more rope. You don't have to be here if you don't wanna. I used to cut grass and smile like I meant it. We squatted in the shade when the mowers overheated. I'm stubborn, I am my mother's love, measured in eyedroppers, burn rubber from the coppers, the eye doctor left. When they march me down the road, so when them ride me down the road. Excuse me, I got excuses. Woke up on the West Coast for the first time in my life. Drove cross country, but I remember those flights. Oh, you big and bad, blowing hay and sticks, huffing bricks. I don't wanna lose control. I can grab my space to grow.
It's not finished. It's finished.